What's up guys, welcome back to another daily Resident Evil video and welcome to the Mod Kid channel. I was looking through tier lists made by people in the past on the TierMaker app and I found a Resident Evil tier list that discusses a topic I have not done before. So today I'm going to be ranking all 11 DLCs in the Resident Evil franchise from worst to best. There's actually a couple more Resident Evil DLCs out there, but these are the 11 that are actually canon to the Resident Evil series. So starting us off strong here is going to be the OG Separate Ways from RE4, which I had to go ahead and put in the S rank immediately. Separate Ways was definitely a great DLC that we got in the OG RE4, and it was also the first kind of DLC that we got in a Resident Evil game. Ada Wong was always my favorite Resident Evil character just because she is so underrated and badass at the same time. But this was one of those moments where we actually got to play as her and she actually got her own storyline. And the OG Separate Ways has one of the hardest boss fights that I ever went through at a young age, and that was the Sadler fight at the end of Separate Ways. Also, when I first started my YouTube channel, I spent a lot of time trying to speedrun Separate Ways, and learning the strats to this was super fun, so I have a very special place in my heart just for this game. So coming up next on the tier list is going to be an entry that I'm not sure a lot of you guys are going to agree with or not, but I'm going to be putting Resident Evil Village Shadows of Rose DLC in the S rank as well. The story aspect to this DLC was really cool because it was set in a futuristic date when Rose was older, and she also had some kind of crazy Mega Myces power. The Shadows of Rose DLC is also responsible for a really cool Evelyn boss fight that you have to do in House Bienvito, and it also has a really crazy action-packed final boss fight against Mother Miranda, which also includes Rose's father, Ethan Winters. This DLC I think was absolutely perfect, but another touch I would like to add is I think it also had one of the hardest puzzles in not only Resident Evil 8, but in all of Resident Evil DLCs that we've ever had. I was completely lost and clueless when doing the animal painting puzzle. Now moving on to the next one is going to be the Separate Ways DLC in RE4 Remake. I thought this one was good, so I went ahead and put it in the B rank, but I definitely didn't think that it was that great, and it also didn't serve that much of a replay value as I felt that the original Separate Ways had. One thing that points out to me a lot in the Separate Ways remake is that we got to fight the U3 and we also got to experience the laser room, but there were so many new and different elements to the Resident Evil 4 remake main story that when playing Separate Ways Remake, it pretty much just felt like they took all of these other used elements like the U3 and the laser room, and because they didn't have room for those things in the main story of RE4 Remake, they pretty much just included it in Separate Ways instead. So pretty much what I'm getting at is that Separate Ways Remake is practically just filled up with all of the scrapped content. Not to take much away from the remake, because I think Separate Ways Remake was fun, but the original is a little bit better in terms of replay value. So anyways, moving on with the next entry is by far, I think, my favorite DLC in all of Resident Evil, so it's going to be going right up at the top of the S rank, and that is none other than Lost in Nightmares in RE5. Quite like the original Separate Ways, I've spent a lot of time trying to speedrun this game just because it's very fun to just go through and learn all the strats and just play this game over and over again. Also, back in the day, of course, when this game was more active, I would actually go through and play Lost in Nightmares online with random people, and I would have a lot of fun doing so. I would like to say that it's definitely my most played DLC ever in a Resident Evil game. Also, the raid of the Spencer Mansion by Chris and Jill to take down Albert Wesker is just absolutely top tier storytelling. But while we're on the topic of RE5, let's move on to this next entry, which is going to be RE5's Desperate Escape DLC. This one's definitely a great DLC, so I went ahead and put it in the A rank. This DLC definitely requires you to fight and defeat enemies a lot more, as the final section to this DLC is literally just a platform in which you have to just survive waves of enemies until the time limit runs out. But it's really cool in this DLC that we got to see just how Jill and Josh got that helicopter, which they eventually go take to that giant volcano, which helps Chris and Sheva finally take out Albert Wesker for good, thanks to those rocket launchers that are also inside that helicopter. And man, I just gotta say, rip Doug, he was a brave soldier.
He was a brave soldier.
He was my friend.
Now we're going to be moving on to Resident Evil Revelations 2 DLC, and we're going to be starting with the Little Miss DLC. This DLC is really fun, and I think it's really deserving of the A rank because you get to play as Natalia, and you also get to play as Dark Natalia. This entire DLC you get to use absolutely no weapons for, so you have to use your stealth-like abilities to get through the enemies, and you can do so by guiding regular Natalia through these enemies with the help of Dark Natalia. Now, if this kind of style of gameplay was the main focal point in a Resident Evil game, then I wouldn't be so much of a fan of it, but when it comes to a little DLC, I don't mind having a cool little stealth game like this one. So that one I'm definitely going to be leaving up in the A rank, but moving on to the next DLC in Revelations 2, which is called The Struggle. And to be honest, I didn't find it nearly as fun as the other DLC in Revelations 2, so I'm just going to be putting it down in the C rank. They had a cool new element in this DLC where you were able to hunt rabbits and animals for rations of food, which didn't really serve as big of a purpose as you think it would, and it was pretty much just used as a way to have extra lives in case you die. Other than that, the gameplay is pretty much just you being set in different locations of Revelations 2 and having a certain amount of enemies that you have to defeat. But other than that, the storyline is pretty cool, and watching all the cutscenes is pretty sick because you get to see Moira actually get to the point where she meets up with her father, Barry Burton, and saves him and Natalia. So the cutscenes were pretty good, but I would like to say the gameplay to that DLC was pretty mediocre. Now, if you guys have been looking at this tier list, then you'd probably see that there is a never played it category at the bottom, and I added that because I have never played the Resident Evil 7 DLC, and I did not want to judge those on any kind of ranking, seeing as I haven't played them before. But mark my words, guys, I will get around to playing the Resident Evil 7 DLC eventually, but until then, you guys will just have to go down in the comments and let me know where you think the Resident Evil 7 DLCs should be placed on this tier list. And of course, before I get out of here, I'm going to go ahead and go through each of my entries so you guys can see whether or not you agree or disagree with my tier list. So starting at the very top, and in my opinion, the best DLC in Resident Evil history is going to be Lost in Nightmares. And follow up with that is going to be the original Separate Ways and Resident Evil Village Shadows of Rose DLC. Below those ones, in the A rank, are going to be Resident Evil 5 Desperate Escape DLC and Revelations 2 Little Miss DLC. In the middle of this tier list, at the B rank, is going to be the Resident Evil 4 Remake Separate Ways. And at the bottom of our tier list is going to be Resident Evil Revelations 2 The Struggle DLC. And of course at the bottom is the RE7 DLCs that I never played. So that is officially my Resident Evil DLCs tier list. Make sure to leave a like on this video if you agreed with this list, and feel free to comment down below what other kind of tier list videos you want to see on this channel in the future. Also, a very special shout out to my one and only YouTube Pro member, Ico Pro Sam. I post every single day, so make sure you guys hit subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss another single daily upload. And don't forget, you too can also become a member of the channel today and receive special badges and emojis. But hopefully you guys go on to have a good rest of your day or night, and with that being said, I will see you all in the next video tomorrow. Peace.